In the first year of the 10,000 Races era, many alien monsters descended to Earth. Earth became a battleground for thousands of humans against the monsters. At the beginning of the war, although there were humans with extraordinary powers, their numbers were few. Therefore, humans suffered many defeats. Humans attempted to defend themselves with firearms and nuclear bombs against the monsters until they finally managed to build 10 lines of defense. Within 10 years, 2 out of the 10 defense lines made by humans had been destroyed, worsening the human defense situation. Amidst despair, humans tried to continue fighting to the death. Since the war with the monsters began, the number of humans who perished in the Eastern Alliance alone exceeded 1 million. With diminishing weaponry, the human war against the monsters relied increasingly on humans with superpowers, whose numbers were decreasing. Nevertheless, the human spirit to reclaim their survival and homeland from the rule of the monsters remained strong. They fought with full vigor. And during the 10 years of war against the monsters, the largest human recruitment in history began in the northern border industrial city of the Eastern Alliance. In a grand ceremony to honor the fallen humans in battle, Mayor Veteran delivered a speech that mentioned a young man named Chan Guai who had fallen. He was a 19-year-old youth with level 2 electrical attributes. He died in a fierce battle against monsters. The veteran mayor also recounted several other youths who had fallen while carrying out missions on the front lines against the monsters. Behind the mayor, photos and names of those who had fallen in battle were displayed. They were all our friends and family. They were our siblings. People could be seen crying as they remembered their fallen friends. The mayor continued his speech. He mentioned that a few months ago, Defense Line 9 had been destroyed. If the monsters continued trying to breach the defense lines, the next target from the monsters would be the city of Yi. Therefore, there was no other way but to fight the monsters to the death. The mayor then asked the young people gathered at the event if they were ready to fight. Loud cheers were heard from the mouths of the young people, indicating that they were ready to battle the monsters. The mayor then instructed the young people to join the military. Not long after, the registration post was stormed by young people eager to join the military. With great enthusiasm, they wanted to join the frontline forces. Amidst the spirited shouts of the young people to fight the monsters, a young man was seen standing silently. The young people then submitted their registration letters and scrambled to join the frontline forces. The registration officer accepted the registration letters from the young people one by one until it was Nan Jiying's turn. The officer read Nan Jiying's profile. He hailed from the city of Yi and was 22 years old. Currently, Nanji was studying architecture at the Industrial University in the city of Yi. Then the officer asked, would Nanji join the frontline forces? Nanji remained silent for a moment upon hearing the officer's question. Then he replied that he did not want to join the frontline forces. The officer was surprised by Nanji's answer. Nanji then reiterated that he wanted to be in the rear to assist the logistics troops. Nanji's words puzzled the other young people. In the rear, there were only women, children, and the elderly. They thought Nanji was only afraid of death. The officer tried to change Nanji's decision to join the frontline forces because Nanji had a strong and youthful physique. Furthermore, the front line needed many troops to fight the monsters. However, Nanji seemed to stick to his decision to only join the rear forces. One of his friends shouted at Nanji, asking if he was still the brave Nanji who saved his friends in the midst of the alien invasion. Then other friends shouted to try to convince Nanji that he had made the wrong decision. However, another officer came and calmed the commotion. He told Nanji that joining the military was not compulsory. It depended on personal desire and individual responsibility. You can choose to stay in the rear. The officer said to Nanji. He regretted Nanji's decision, although Nanji's achievements were quite good. Then the officer told Nanji to take his report card and leave. Nanji then left the registration post amidst the ridicule and mockery of his friends. They regarded Nanji as a coward and didn't want to see him again. The next day, the air fleet was seen starting to move towards the frontline defense of humanity. Likewise, a convoy of ground forces was moving in droves, carrying thousands of people who would fight against the monsters. They appeared enthusiastic and confident that they would win the battle. For them, protecting their home and country was the primary duty as humans. Nanji watched the convoy of troop transport vehicles from a distance. Suddenly, Nanji's phone rang. Nanji then picked up his phone. It turned out there was a news notification for today. Among the news spread today was about a new candidate who refused to join the military. Then various comments came with various opinions. Not a few of those comments condemned the decision of a cowardly young man who refused to join the front line with the military. Nanji read the comments from the city residents about himself expressionlessly. Nanji said in his heart. He felt sorry for all of them heading to the front lines because it was just like insects flying into the fire. In his previous life, Nanji was just like them. He joined the frontline forces. In the end, he even joined the Battle Command headquarters and became an experienced strategist. When humanity suffered setbacks, he managed to learn 5 great talents and was able to implant these 5 types of talent trees into his body. As long as the 5 talents could reach their maximum level and collaborate well, he could change the course of the battle. However, before he finished devising the battle strategy, humanity had suffered defeat. And in the end, many humans died at the hands of those monsters. In a dying condition, Nanji refused to accept that defeat. He regretted it. If only he had completed that strategy, he could have protected humanity. Perhaps due to his strong desire, or perhaps it was fate, Nanji reincarnated. And the talent trees implanted in his body were also brought back to the present intact. The 5 talent trees consisted of the taming talent tree to gather and control mutant beasts and enhance their strength, the elemental talent tree to create forbidden mantras, the Azura talent tree to enhance strength after destroying monsters, the formation talent tree to compose various formations with unlimited power, and the undead talent tree to resurrect dead creatures underground. Although it required a lot of resources and time, as long as he could develop these 5 talents to their maximum level, he could devise an effective strategy to fight the monsters. Despite the destruction of the 10 human defense lines, with his power and strategy, Nanji was able to destroy all those monsters alone and protect humanity. However, currently, even though he was on the battlefield, he couldn't defeat many monsters and gather resources to develop his 5 talents. If forced, it would only damage his talents. He thought the best way to obtain many resources was to go to the trial grounds. There were many mutant animals there. By continuously undergoing trials, Nanji could obtain resources to enhance his talents. So Nanji went to the trial grounds to get resources. He saw that the trial grounds were empty because people had gone to the battlefield. Slaughtering all the mutant beasts in the trial grounds and turning them into food resources for the troops was the right decision for Nanji at the moment. In that place, there were elderly women who were tasked with preparing food supplies for the troops fighting on the front lines. A girl with a staff approached that place and offered her help. The girl was Xiaolu. Nanji approached the women and greeted them. He said that he would train in the trial grounds. But Nanji saw that the women needed help, so he intended to help them deal with the mutant beasts. Xiaolu welcomed Nanji's arrival with a smile. She then invited Nanji to change clothes. Meanwhile, the 2 elderly women seemed displeased with Nanji's presence. They wondered why a young man would come to the trial grounds when others were fighting on the front lines. One of the elderly women stared sharply at Nanji, trying to recognize him. She then remembered something and took out her phone. She showed Nanji the news about him refusing to go to the front lines on her phone. Her friend was surprised to hear this news, but they thought maybe Nanji had some reason for wanting to be in the trial grounds. After all, they currently needed help dealing with the mutant beasts. Xiaolu took out a sword and scratched the floor with it. She explained to Nanji that it was a steel sword used to deal with the mutant beasts. She hoped Nanji would be careful because the mutant beasts were very fierce. Nanji understood and accepted the steel sword. He then left Xiaolu and the elderly women. Xiaolu was still watching Nanji leave. One of the elderly women glanced at her and said that Xiaolu shouldn't be easily attracted to that man because he was a coward who refused to join the battlefield. Xiaolu was surprised to hear the explanation from the old woman that it was Nanjiing. She looked worried that Nanji wouldn't be able to handle the beasts. Xiaolu suspected that soon Nanji would come out of the door screaming in fear. Then the system gave a warning that Nanji was a new player who had never taken a trial. The system confirmed if Nanji would start the trial. Nanji then confirmed that he was starting the trial. At the moment, he was in a spacious room. On the left and right were cells with iron doors. Not long after, the iron doors opened. Then various forms of mutant beasts emerged from the cells. The mutant beasts surrounded Nanji and prepared to attack him. Nanji was determined to face any curse on himself to save humanity. He stared sharply at the mutant beasts in front of him. He then prepared with the weapon in his hand to deal with the mutant beasts. Nanji then used the taming skill to control the mutant beasts. Since the alien invasion, many animals have mutated and evolved due to the effects of spiritual energy. In Nanji's previous life, he often faced monsters and mutant animals on the front lines. One of the mutant animals that once fought with Nanji was an umbrella bird, known for its muscle memory. However, Nanji had already discovered this creature's weakness, which was in its head. Nanji kept fighting the mutant animals that attacked him. He obtained source stone extracts every time he managed to destroy a mutant animal. The mechanism for increasing strength should still apply until now. When Nanji managed to defeat an umbrella bird, he would receive a source stone. Nanji continued to fight against these creatures even though he sustained many injuries. He tried to avoid each attack from the beasts to prevent them from hitting his vital points. One of the mutant beasts looked like it was about to pounce on Nanji with its sharp mouth. Nanji, overwhelmed by the attacks from the mutant animals from all sides, tried to remain vigilant of every enemy movement. He successfully fended off the beast's attack with his sword and struck the creature with his foot. Nanji attempted to attack the lower part of the mutant animal. He then braced himself on one of his hands, while the hand holding the sword slashed at the creature's leg. After that, he prepared to leap. He intended to eliminate the disturbance from above first. Then Nanji jumped and slashed the necks of several mutant beasts, severing them. The more mutant beasts he destroyed, the more his attack efficiency increased, just as he had predicted. After some time, he became exhausted after defeating the mutant beasts attacking him. He paused for a moment to regulate his erratic breathing. Around him lay the corpses of the mutant beasts, destroyed by his sword slashes. Suddenly, the leader of the mutant beasts, the Umbrella Bird Emperor, appeared and attacked Nanji. Given his current physical condition, Nanji would have difficulty defeating this mutant beast. He couldn't possibly fight the mutant directly. Meanwhile, the mutant repeatedly attempted to pounce on Nanji with its sharp beak. Nanji tried to find a weak spot on the mutant leader. Several times he slashed his sword at the mutant beast's body, but it didn't make the mutant beast fall. It turned out that the Umbrella Bird Emperor's resilience had increased compared to what Nanji remembered from his previous life. Nanji then came up with a plan to defeat the large mutant beast. He prepared to launch a counterattack against the mutant monster. He then stomped his foot to jump as high as possible to attack the creature's head. Quickly, Nanji directed his sword towards the mutant monster's head, intending to destroy it. Meanwhile, the two elderly women named Nurse Wang and Nurse Li seemed impatient waiting for Nanji to fight the mutant beasts. Xiaolu approached them and asked why they were there. Shouldn't they be heading to the cafeteria for lunch? It turned out they were waiting for Nanji and wanted to see how long the young man could last. Nurse Li said she was willing to bet that Nanji must have sneaked away from that place. Nurse Wang responded to Nurse Li's remark. She promised to catch Nanji if he tried to escape and cause trouble there. Xiaoli reminded them that the A-level trial was no easier than fighting on the front lines. Nanji needed time to finish off all the mutant beasts. Suddenly, an announcement from the system stated that trial participant Nanji Ying had successfully completed the first floor of the A-level trial. Nurse Wang sneered. She said it was impossible for Nanji to finish the trial that quickly. She suspected that soon Nanji would come out looking scared because he couldn't handle the mutant beasts. Then Nurse Li invited Nurse Wang to lunch. Suddenly, Nurse Wang was startled by a large object crashing into her. She stared wide-eyed at the large object, which turned out to be the corpse of a mutant monster. Both nurses were shocked because they didn't expect Nanji to successfully overcome the mutant beasts and their leader. Nanji Ying had managed to defeat 2,000 beasts on the first floor, setting a new record for the first floor trial. His clothes looked tattered from the beast's claw marks. Nurse Wang still couldn't believe Nanji's success in overcoming all the mutant beasts on the first floor. How did you complete the level A trial? Nurse Wang asked Nanji curiously. Nanji replied that he had finished the trial. He looked very exhausted after fighting those mutants. Then he left the two nurses and Xiaolu. Nurse Wang said that the corpses of the mutant beasts could now be processed. Xiao Lu responded to Nurse Wang's suggestion. She then arranged how to process the bodies of the mutant beasts. However, she thought the number of mutant bodies was too many. Meanwhile, Nanji was seen cleaning himself in the bathroom. He was still thinking about his success in overcoming all the creatures in the level A trial, which turned out not to be enough to level up. The experience needed to level up had doubled. It seemed that reaching Beast Tamer level 3 on just the first floor was not enough for him. Suddenly, a news report about the results of the war was heard from a loudspeaker. According to the news, the next defense phase would begin soon. Level 7 Super Ability Holder, Son of Thunder Punishment, Level 6 Super Ability Holder, and Flame Giant had arrived at the front lines. Nanji remembered from his previous life that Son of Thunder Punishment and Flame Giant would soon be defeated and killed after entering the battlefield, making the situation at the front lines much worse. He thought there was no more time until Defense Line 8 collapsed. Nanji was determined to speed up his preparations. For him, it was a race against time. There was no time to rest. He had to head to the second floor of the trial tower as soon as possible. Nurse Wang and several other nurses were seen processing the bodies of the mutant beasts that Nanji had just defeated. They were still talking about Nanji Ying's success in overcoming all the creatures on the first floor of the trial tower. They thought Nanji must need a long rest to recover. Nurse Li was heard praising Nanji for his hard work in overcoming all the creatures on the first floor. Previously, no one had managed to complete the level A trial. However, according to Nurse Wang, trying to achieve too much in one go was not good. It was better to progress gradually. Nurse Wang suspected that Nanji would need a long time to recover from his injuries. He might even report being disabled and not return to that place. Xiao Lu was surprised to see Nanji Ying back at that place. So were the two nurses. Nurse Li warned Nurse Wang not to speak loudly, but it seemed Nurse Wang still underestimated Nanji. Nurse Wang then spoke to Nanji in a displeased tone. "You've completed your work on the first floor. So why are you back here?" Nanji replied that he was going to the second floor to continue the next trial. Nanji continued walking past Nurse Wang, who looked bewildered. "You want to go to the second floor with those severe injuries? What are you trying to prove?" Nurse Wang shouted at Nanji Ying. Xiao Lu approached Nanji. She suggested that Nanji should recover from his injuries first because the second floor was filled with large mutants. She also said she would find some people to help him. Nanji thanked Xiao Lu for her advice and help. However, he preferred to do it alone. Seeing Nanji's actions, Nurse Wang spoke loudly. "If you're so great, then why don't you go to the front lines? What's the point of showing off here?" Xiao Lu and the others at the place were astonished by Nanji's attitude. Nanji Ying did not seem like someone who was cowardly and hiding in the rear lines. Not long after, Nanji Ying entered the second floor. In front of him, several large monsters blocked his path and were ready to attack. Nanji began his assault, striving to defeat all the creatures on the second floor. He felt greater pressure on this floor. With quick and agile movements, Nanji swung his sword at the mutant beasts with full force. He glanced back. One of the large creatures was trying to attack him from behind. He turned and slashed his sword at the body of the large creature. However, his attack missed, and he was rammed by the large creature, sending him flying. Nanji struggled to get up, preparing for the next attack. He thought that he had no advantage in size or strength. He couldn't take a direct hit from the monster, especially since he was still injured. The mutant beasts, which had evolved from bulls, looked angry and were about to attack together again. Nanji watched the mutant beasts. He felt like they were mocking him. However, Nanji was not someone who fought without preparation. He began to observe the positions of the mutants to determine his target. It didn't take long before the mutant beasts charged at Nanji again. Nanji leaped up to attack the mutant beasts. He landed on top of one of the creatures and thrust his sword into it. He then ripped through the creature's body to overcome it. The beast screamed in pain with a loud noise. The other mutant beasts seemed ready to attack Nanji again. Nanji looked at the beasts. He thought that since the mutant beasts on level 2 could be tamed, why not tame them first and then deal with them? Nanji then activated his beast taming talent. A vortex of energy appeared in his hand. Moments later, the energy vortex grew larger and hit all the creatures in the area. The mutant beasts started to be affected by the power of Nanji's beast-taming talent. One by one, the mutant beasts fell to the floor. Nanji was pleased that his method worked to subdue the mutant beasts. He then intended to continue leveling up. He needed to reach level 3 in one step. 3 days later, behind the trial grounds in Yi City, several people were processing mutant beast carcasses to be turned into food. Nanji was among them. He sat down with his head lowered, satisfied with his work for the day. In just 3 days, more than 10,000 beasts had been killed. This was far more efficient than being on the front lines. Nanji planned to head into the wilderness tonight because his beast-taming talent had reached level 6. It was a place where even a level 5 ability holder couldn't easily escape. Due to super ability holders and firearms, the mutant beasts rarely attacked the city directly. Nanji intended to use a strategy of taming the mutant beasts. He believed it was the key to countering the alien invasion. An old man approached Nanji, who was still sitting against the wall. He asked Nanji if they needed to work overtime to move all the mutant beast meat. Nanji replied that they didn't need to do that because he was leaving. Nurse Wang looked disdainfully at Nanji's departure. She said that Nanji had already given up after only a few days of working there. But the old man defended Nanji, saying that he had done his best. Nurse Wang was annoyed with the old man for interfering. Nanji Ying continued walking away, ignoring Nurse Wang's belittling comments. Xiao Lu approached Nanji and suggested he rest first, since they had finished clearing the pile of mutant beast meat. Nanji smiled and said he had to leave immediately. Xiao Lu understood and let Nanji go. Several vehicles were seen speeding along the road. One of the drivers shouted for people to get out of the way. They said they were transporting wounded people from the front lines who needed medical attention. Nanji Ying, standing by the roadside, saw the convoy of vehicles carrying war casualties. He suspected that the situation at the defense line was not good. One of the city's residents pointed out a rocket above the city, while another resident thought humanity was currently in the lead. Seeing the rocket, Nanji thought it was a dire situation. They needed long-range assistance from the rear. The day the defense line would fall was not far off. Nanji then put on a protective mask over his face. He seemed ready for the situation that was about to unfold. Nanji was determined to use the short amount of time wisely. Suddenly, one of the trucks in the convoy stopped moving. It turned out that one of the trucks had broken down. A man got out and intended to check the condition of the truck. A woman with long hair named Xiao Nan suggested that they leave the broken-down truck behind because there were many dangerous beasts around. The man obeyed Xiao Nan's words and intended to board the truck with the others. Suddenly, from a distance, Nanji was seen running quickly past them. Xiao Nan was shocked and wondered who would dare leave the city at night. Xiao Nan then shouted at Nanji to be careful because there were dangerous giant wolves. Her younger sister screamed for them to leave the place immediately because the medicines they carried were urgently needed by the people being treated in the city hospital. But Xiao Nan seemed determined to save Nanji, who was about to be attacked by giant wolves. Her sister continued to urge them to leave immediately. The medicines they carried were critical. Finally, Xiao Nan listened to her sister, and they left the place, which was the giant wolf's den. Suddenly, they were startled by a scream for help. The scream came from a man lying on the roadside with injuries all over his body. Xiao Nan saw through the truck's side mirror the emergence of a steel giant wolf behind their truck. They tried to quickly leave to avoid the monster's attack. However, unexpectedly, the monster appeared suddenly in front of the car. Her sister ordered Xiao Nan to drive the truck properly while she would try to fend off the monster with her weapon. She immediately aimed her weapon at the steel giant wolf. In the distance, Nanji heard the sound of gunfire coming from the truck carrying medicine. He saw many giant wolves surrounding them and seemed ready to attack. But Nanji thought this was an advantage for him. It saved him from difficulty. With the increase in spiritual energy, the mutant beasts became smarter. The sound of several gunshots still echoed from inside the truck. Meanwhile, the giant wolf continued to try to attack the two women inside the car. Her sister shouted for Xiao Nan to be careful in driving the truck. She said that her sister had to drive the truck properly while fending off the numerous giant wolves. Then Xiao Nan focused on driving the truck past several giant wolves. Meanwhile, Nanji was seen fighting against the mutant giant wolves. He saw the appearance of the king of the giant wolves near the crowd of mutants. He thought that if he could handle these wolves, he could save the medical team carrying the medicine. The king of the mutant wolves appeared to be running towards Nanji. Nanji then prepared to fight the king of the mutant wolves. Then suddenly a white light spot appeared above Nanji's head. Nanji was seen activating his beast-taming talent skill. He stared sharply at the king of the mutant wolves. A few moments later, he successfully awakened. A powerful swirl of energy struck the bodies of the mutant wolves, scattering them. Some mutant wolves were hit by Nanji's burst of power and were sent flying. The king of the mutant wolves looked angry and glared at Nanji. The roar of the king made the mutant wolves gather again and move to attack Nanji. The wolves ran, trying to pounce on Nanji with their sharp fangs and claws. Meanwhile, Nanji was already prepared with his power to withstand the attacks of the mutant wolves. He thought he should defeat their leader first to subdue his subordinates. Then he jumped up to attack the king of the mutant wolves. The mutant wolves looked up as Nanji hovered above them. Nanji hovered above and unleashed his power to repel the mutant wolves. His attacks made the mutant wolves scatter and fly away. He prioritized subduing the leader of the mutant wolves. The king of the mutant wolves roared loudly as if challenging Nanji. But with swift movements, Nanji used his beast-taming talent skill to tame the king of the mutant wolves. He placed his hand on the head of the king to channel his power. A few moments later, the king of the mutant wolves bowed as a sign of being tamed. The king's eyes began to look normal again. The other mutant wolves followed their king and submitted to Nanji. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet after the rage of the mutant wolves was subdued by Nanji. Meanwhile, Xiaonan's sister was still seen shooting her weapon to fend off the mutant wolves. She told her sister to drive the truck quickly. Xiaonan pressed the truck's gas pedal harder to leave the place as soon as possible. But suddenly, they were surprised because the truck they were riding in suddenly stopped. Her sister began to panic upon realizing their truck had suddenly stopped. Meanwhile, outside the truck, some mutant wolves were still trying to attack it. The two women inside the truck were frightened. They saw one of the mutant wolves successfully break the truck's window. Meanwhile, other mutant wolves tried to attack both of them. However, Xiaonan's sister was surprised by the sudden change in behavior of the mutant wolves. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The fierce mutant wolves suddenly showed friendly faces. Then the wolves turned and left them. The mutant wolves left the convoy of trucks carrying medicines. Xiaonan and her sister were still puzzled and didn't understand what was happening. The mutant wolves seemed to be heading towards a specific location, where Nanji stood surrounded by the mutant wolves and their king. Xiaonan observed from a distance. She realized that the mutant wolves had been tamed by someone. Her sister seemed incredulous that someone had managed to tame thousands of mutant wolves. What level of beast tamer was that? This was extraordinary. Nanji sat on a large rock. He felt pleased to have successfully tamed a large number of mutant wolves. Additionally, he also managed to obtain a source stone for taming the mutant wolves. He didn't expect to acquire a pet so quickly. He stroked the very tame king of the mutant wolves. Nanji then ordered all the mutant wolves to disperse. He would call them when needed. He reminded the mutant wolves not to attack humans. A few moments later, the atmosphere in the area seemed calm. Nanji stood up and intended to go to other places controlled by mutant creatures. He wanted to subdue all the mutant creatures there. He thought about gathering forces from a very large beast group to prepare for a big battle with the alien creatures. But before that, he had to secure the medicine delivery route to ensure it wasn't disrupted by the mutant animals. Suddenly, Nanji received a message from the factory. The message informed him that there would be an emergency meeting at the trial grounds. Nanji wondered what was happening. The story continues at the trial grounds in Yi City. At that time, a leader named Lin Yukai was venting his anger at the officers in the trial grounds. He felt disappointed with the officers for not working optimally. Lin Yukai considered the officers in the trial grounds incapable of handling beasts slightly stronger than them. The leader of the trial grounds officers tried to explain that dealing with higher-level beasts required more time. Lin Yukai looked furious upon hearing the officer's excuse. He said that the officers in the rear should understand the situation at the front lines. The troops at the front were nearly starving waiting for food supplies. Lin Yukai went on to say that the reserve of mutant beasts in the rear was dwindling to support the military's food needs at the front lines. Therefore, he ordered the officers to handle higher-level mutant beasts because they were larger. The officer obeyed Lin Yotsai's order. He would send more people from Yi City to help deal with the beasts in the rear. However, it seemed that Lin Yukai felt the officer's efforts would be in vain. He had been around Yi City and didn't see anyone useful. Xiao Nan, who was there, tried to explain that the high-level mutant beasts in the rear were now at level 4. That was beyond what Yi City could handle. However, Lin Yukai didn't want to hear Xiao Nan's explanation. Instead, he belittled Yi City as weak. Even the young men who refused to join the military were from Yi City. Lin Yukai thought Yi City had no sense of responsibility for important matters. Suddenly, Nurse Wang spoke up loudly. She was tired of hearing Officer Lin always belittling Yi City. She mentioned that her husband and 3 sons had died at the front lines. Therefore, she was angry at Officer Lin for saying Yi City had no responsibility. Nurse Wang continued to speak loudly, saying that she and her friends had been working around the clock in shifts just to meet the military's food supply needs. Officer Lin Yukai looked annoyed with Nurse Wang for daring to confront him. One of Lin Yotsai's guards approached Nurse Wang. He threatened her for daring to defy his boss. The guard then clenched his fist and was about to hit Nurse Wang. But suddenly, Nanji punched the guard first with his left hand. The guard stumbled and cried out in pain from Nanji's powerful punch. Nanji then said that it would be better if they did not resort to violence. The officers at the trial grounds were shocked and delighted to see Nanji's arrival. The trial grounds leader looked at Nanji. He didn't expect Nanji could take down a level 5 ability holder guard with just one move. Officer Lin Yukai stood up and asked for Nanji's identity. He threatened Nanji by pointing a gun at him. He didn't like anyone daring to challenge him. Nanji stared sharply at Officer Lin Yukai. He recognized Lin Yukai. In his previous life, he knew that Lin Yukai was a war traitor. He had managed to capture him after spending 12 years on the battlefield. Lin Yukai had been trading various military supplies from the rear to the front lines. His actions caused significant losses until he was finally captured. Nanji suspected that Lin Yukai must have been monitoring the speed of food supplies from Yi City. He seemed to have a plan to eradicate the high-level mutant beasts through Yi City's efforts and profit from it. Lin Yukai still pointed his gun at Nanji. Meanwhile, Nanji stood calmly. His eyes stared sharply at Lin Yukai. He planned to deal with Lin Yukai. But before that, he would try to drain Lin Yotsai's resources first. The officers at the trial grounds were angry seeing Lin Yukai using a weapon to threaten them. They were furious with Lin Yotsai's behavior of not appreciating their hard work. Officer Lin Yukai began to feel a bit scared seeing the resistance from these people. He looked at Nanji and seemed to recognize Nanji's face. It turned out he recognized Nanji as a deserter from Yi City who was hiding in the rear. He then threatened to punish Nanji for daring to injure an officer and refusing military duty. Nanji smirked. He said that no matter what Lin Yukai said, currently he was the only one capable of taking down tens of thousands of mutant beasts in the tower. If he were executed, the military's food supply would be disrupted. Lin Yukai and his guard were shocked to learn that the slaughter ace of the factory was Nanji. Nanji then said that high-level mutant beasts could affect human minds with their corrupted energy. Trial grounds elsewhere couldn't handle these mutants. Only the trial grounds in Yi City could deal with these high-level mutants. Lin Yukai became hesitant in this situation. Currently, Nanji was in a good position. He couldn't punish Nanji because it would only harm himself. Seeing this situation, Lin Yukai thought he might have to go with the flow. Moreover, if Nanji still wanted to carry out the task of handling these mutant beasts, it would be beneficial for him. Finally, Lin Yukai decided to send 5,000 level 4 mutant beasts to Yi City. If Nanji could handle them within a week, he would be spared from punishment. But if he failed, Officer Lin would take everything. Before leaving, Officer Lin made Nanji take a military oath to accept his challenge. After Officer Lin Yukai left, the people looked worried about Nanji's safety. They were ready to help if needed. But Nanji told them that he could handle all the mutants himself. Among the level 4 mutant beasts to be sent to Yi City were creatures far stronger. These creatures had strong defenses and mental resilience. Not just for the military's food reserves, the materials these creatures had were also very valuable. Nanji thought Lin Yukai was truly cunning and would do anything for money. Even so, these creatures were the perfect material to enhance his Azura talent. Nanji planned to eradicate all the mutant beasts sent by Lin Yukai so he could improve his talent. Then he would take care of Lin Yukai and his network. A few days later, 5,000 mutant beasts had arrived in the city of Yi. A delivery officer told the officers of the trial grounds in Yi to inspect and sign for the receipt. Xiao Nan, representing the trial ground officers, met with the delivery officer. The delivery officer then read out a military order stating that the logistics division soldier of Yi City, Nanji Ying, was assigned to process 5,000 level 4 mutant beasts. Nanji Ying had to complete the task within 1 week. Under the rules of war, soldier Nanji Ying had to submit to the military supply officer Lin Yukai. According to the officer, Nanji Ying was charged with insubordination and inciting worker unrest, as well as assaulting an officer. Therefore, if Nanji Ying did not complete the task on time, she would be punished without needing approval from higher-ranking officers. This meant Nanji Ying would be executed by a firing squad. The officer concluded the reading of the military order for Nanji Ying. Xiao Nan and the trial ground officers who heard this were upset with Lin Yotsai's arbitrary decision. Meanwhile, Nanji wondered why she was being threatened with execution. The officer responded, "Didn't Nanji Ying agree to the deal with Lin Yukai back then? She promised that when the time came, she herself would execute Nanji Ying." The officer smiled, apparently underestimating Nanji. Then the officer handed a message card to Nanji. Nanji looked at the officer with a sneer. She said that such words only came from a messenger. One of the officer's guards was angered by Nanji's mockery, but the officer stopped him from causing a scene. He then asked Nanji to start processing the mutant beasts immediately. Nanji approached one of the trial ground officers and Xiao Nan. The trial ground officer explained that to handle the level 4 mutants, they needed anesthetic smoke. However, all supplies had been sent to the hospital, and only a small amount remained. Nanji understood the difficulties faced by the officer, and the three of them walked toward the level 4 mutant beasts to begin handling them. The delivery officer wondered why Nanji was so confident. After all, the level 4 mutant beasts had mental power skills that could damage human minds. Even so, the officer was convinced that Nanji would experience mental disturbances when facing the mutants. The officer felt a bit disappointed with his boss, Lin Yukai, because he wasn't allowed to take any material from the mutants. Instead, it was entrusted to Nanji Ying. However, the officer thought that when he executed Nanji Ying, he would take all of Nanji's materials. The officer then told his guard to know what to report to their boss. The guard understood what the officer meant. Meanwhile, Nanji was already inside the room with the mutant beasts. Although the level 4 mutant beasts could not move, their mental power was very strong. Nanji observed the many mutant beasts in front of her. She felt it wasn't too bad and could certainly be handled. Nanji sensed the mutants could create very realistic illusions. The mental illusions created by the mutants indeed made her a bit anxious. Then suddenly, an illusionary creature moved quickly to attack Nanji. Nanji was startled by the sudden attack from the creature. She then dodged and struck the creature hard. A large creature appeared before Nanji and moved to attack her. Nanji welcomed the appearance of the creature and moved to counterattack. She struck the creature's head with her punch. Nanji managed to overcome the illusionary creatures. She tried to keep her mind from being controlled by the mutants so she could deal with the creatures. Nanji gazed at the mutant beasts in front of her. She needed more energy to enhance her Azura talent. She was still waiting for the mutants to show their abilities. Suddenly, Nanji was startled by a sound in her ear. She tried to find the source of the sound. Slowly, Nanji's consciousness began to be influenced by the sound she heard. "You are too tired. Let it all go. Life should be easy." The whispers tried to affect her mind. She recognized the voice well. It was her father's voice, the person she loved. His voice echoed in her ear again. "Think about the price you have to pay. Think about those who have died. Is it all worth it? The foreign creatures have great power. You can't possibly take revenge." The voice tried to influence Nanji's mind. With the little consciousness she had left, Nanji tried to control her mind, which was starting to be affected. She had to stop all this immediately. Then she exerted her strength to withstand the attack of the malign energy, trying to break her mind. Two great forces clashed, trying to weaken each other. By activating her Asura talent and entering the Asura state, Nanji managed to strengthen her mental power. And the malign energy affecting her was a shortcut to accelerate her talent enhancement. Then Nanji tried to control the level 4 mutant's power to make it obey her. Not long after, she managed to overcome and destroy the level 4 mutant beasts. A loud scream filled the room as the mutants were destroyed by Nanji's power. The story shifts to Lin Yotsai's residence. At that moment, he was talking to someone on the phone. He looked annoyed because he was being pressured to provide such a large quantity of goods. Nonetheless, he wouldn't give up, having already spent a lot of money on his plan. He instructed the person on the phone to keep the other party under control while he thought of a solution. A woman who was Lin Yotsai's personal servant spoke softly, suggesting that he shouldn't work so hard in this post-apocalyptic world. The woman suggested Lin Yukai should spend more time with her instead. Lin Yukai still appeared deep in thought. The demand for quality goods was becoming more urgent. It seemed that not only Hua but also the front lines of other countries were in poor condition. Lin Yukai thought he had to make a lot of money quickly while there was still a chance. He didn't want all the mutant beasts he had painstakingly prepared to go to waste. However, Lin Yukai remembered his cunning subordinates. He had to be careful not to let them harm him. Moreover, he had to be wary of the secret investigation being conducted by the military. All these problems were giving Lin Yukai a headache. He drank the wine given to him by his female servant. Lin Yukai tried to think of a stable place to handle high-level mutant beasts. Suddenly, Lin Yukai received another phone call. It turned out that his subordinate in the city of Yi was reporting on the progress of the mission to eliminate Nanji. Lin Yukai asked his subordinate if Nanji had been dealt with. Unexpectedly, Lin Yotsai's subordinate reported that on the 4th day, Nanji was close to completing the task assigned to her. This report naturally surprised Lin Yukai. He hadn't expected Nanji to overcome the level 4 mutant beasts. Lin Yotsai's subordinate in Yi confirmed that the task of handling the high-level mutants had been successfully completed by Nanji Ying. Lin Yukai looked pleased. He then asked about Nanji Ying's condition after fighting the mutants. His subordinate reported that Nanji Ying was only exhausted, and her mental state was still healthy. Lin Yukai ordered his subordinate to continue monitoring Nanji Ying. Lin Yotsai's subordinate, who was also his bodyguard, understood Lin Yotsai's orders. Meanwhile, the subordinate in Yi was still puzzled by Nanji's successful completion of the task. The officers at the trial grounds in Yi gathered around Nanji, who was sitting in a chair, exhausted. They couldn't believe Nanji had completed such a difficult task alone. Nanji checked her current ability statistics. Over the past few days, her physical and mental strength had increased. Although she had only reached level 5, she had gained the first skill of the Asura talent. Now, Nanji could venture further into the wild to tame more high-level mutant beasts, which would accelerate her plans. Nurse Wang was satisfied with Nanji's success. She said that Xiao Nan's friend had really saved their reputation. Otherwise, the city of Yi would have been looked down upon. Lin Yotsai's subordinate was unhappy with Nanji's success in completing her task because it didn't align with his plan. Nanji realized that some people were displeased with her success. The increase in her Asura level had also enhanced her perception of mental power. She recognized that Lin Yotsai's subordinate was an ability holder. Lin Yotsai's subordinate was very upset with Nanji for ruining his plan to profit. He intended to investigate Nanji. However, the bodyguard stopped him. He reminded him that their task was only to ensure Nanji completed her task. Even if something suspicious was going on, they had to wait until Lin Yukai finished using Nanji. After that, they could eliminate her. Besides, there was a lot of residual mental power around from the mutants, which could affect their minds. Despite being upset, the officer heeded the bodyguard's words. He said he would report to their boss himself. Suddenly, a burst of psychic power approached Nanji. Nanji was able to detect the presence of mental power trying to attack her mind. She smiled, feeling that the power had targeted the wrong person. She thought this was the perfect time to test her Asura talent. Lin Yotsai's subordinate, who attacked Nanji with psychic power, was shocked. His attack should have destroyed Nanji's mental defenses. But what happened? He suddenly couldn't see anything, as if he was in total darkness. Then, a loud voice called out, startling him. The voice directed him to look into one corner. There, he saw a mental entity condensed from malign energy. Lin Yotsai's subordinate was shocked to realize that Nanji also possessed psychic abilities at a higher level than his. He had previously studied Nanji's abilities, but how could her power have increased so quickly? "What are you?" he asked, filled with fear. The subordinate's mind was being attacked by mental power, making him unable to control himself. The entity then spoke to Lin Yotsai's subordinate, saying that who she was didn't matter. This was punishment for daring to use mental power to attack. The psychic ability continued to press on Lin Yotsai's subordinate, causing him pain. The power slowly broke his mind, making him unable to control his thoughts. People were shocked by the strange behavior displayed by Lin Yotsai's fat subordinate. The man seemed to go mad, unable to control his mind and actions. He acted like someone who had lost his sanity, running around and dancing. The bodyguard who saw the delivery officer's behavior didn't understand what was happening. Meanwhile, the officers at the trial grounds thought the man might be suffering from depression due to the heavy workload. The bodyguard observed the man's behavior and suspected that he had been affected by the residual mental power of the mutant beasts, causing him to go insane. If this continued, it would ruin Lin Yotsai's reputation because the man was bad-mouthing Lin Yukai. With one punch, the bodyguard took down the madman. People were shocked by what the bodyguard did, daring to eliminate his own comrade. The bodyguard apologized to everyone for causing a disturbance. He said he had to eliminate his comrade who went mad due to the influence of residual mental power. Then the bodyguard approached Nanji, who was still sitting silently in the chair. He saw Nanji's motionless body. He thought she might have fainted from the mental power. Seeing Nanji's condition, he planned to report to Lin Yukai, his boss, that Nanji was no longer useful. Then he left, saying someone would come to sort out all the problems there, and ordered everyone to work well. Meanwhile, Nanji smiled slightly after the bodyguard left.